Alright, we need to talk about low volume training. Why is everyone and their cousin obsessed with this shit? If I open up my YouTube, for example, my YouTube homepage, let's open this shit up. You got here Mr. Nipples himself, implying that 5 sets grew his bicep more than doing 10 sets. I was like, okay, 10 sets is a bit excessive, but okay. Then you have Jeremy over here, implying here that 4 sets absolutely cooked his biceps and 2 sets were superior. Then I found this video saying 2 sets is king, less is more. We went from 5 sets to 4 sets to 2 sets. And then I found this video saying I only did 1 set. We're about to do 0 sets at this point. At this point, that one meme about going straight to failure is becoming a reality. Like, did we find a new glitch in the system? Is low volume training truly the new meta? Let's find out. Okay, so this whole debate about volume started back in 2017 with this study. This study was done by Dr. Brad J. Schoenfeld. If that name doesn't ring a bell, he's basically like the LeBron James of hypertrophy studies. With this study, he found out that there's a dose-response relationship with volume and hypertrophy. What that basically means is doing more volume will get you more growth, with an upper limit of none. There was no upper limit found in this study. Not only in this study, but in any other study at a time. Like Mr. Nipples has said himself,
while there have been some studies that have shown a plateau in gains, there hasn't been a single study that actually shows a loss in muscle mass from increasing volume.
So what they basically found in this bitch was basically doing at least 10 sets was probably optimal for hypertrophy. But what they did find was a diminishing return. 30 sets didn't cause 3 times more growth than 10 sets. So the search for this upper limit was in full effect. So that was back in 2017. Then came 2019, the second study from Dr. Brad J. Schoenfeld. Okay, with this study is actually insane. With this study, this guy just basically want to find out what that upper limit was. What they did was split the participants into 3 groups. They all did 7 exercises. The 7 exercises you can see on screen right now, 3 times a week. And the only difference was volume. The low volume group did 1 set per exercise. The moderate volume group did 3 sets per exercise. And the high volume group did 5 sets per exercise. So if you do the math, the high volume group did 45 sets for their quads. And that's not even the worst part. They did every set until failure. Like, where the hell did you get these participants from, bro? Arkham Asylum? Schoenfeld wasn't messing around, bro. So what were the actual results of this study? If you look at the screen, you can see that the high volume group grew significantly more than the moderate or low volume group. If you look at the quads, you can see a 3 times increase in comparison to the low volume group. So this basically confirms doing more volume is better for muscle growth, right? Not really. There are some problems with this study. Number 1, they did this shit for 8 weeks. No one is doing 45 sets for a muscle per week for a longer period of time, bro. If they were doing this for longer than 12 weeks, they would have literally destroyed their own bodies. If they did this for longer than 12 weeks, that was a one-way ticket to permanent wheelchair. Problem number 2, they did 15 sets for their quads per session. You cannot tell me that doesn't include junk volume. While we don't know the ceiling of total volume per week, we do know the ceiling for volume in a single session. And that's around 10 to 12 sets, assuming those sets aren't all to failure. If you went to failure for every single set, that ceiling is probably way lower at like 6 or 7. Problem number 3, to measure growth, they used ultrasound measurements. The problem with ultrasound measurements is it doesn't distinguish between actual muscle fibers or swelling caused by inflammation, which isn't that crazy to think of given the fact that they did 45 sets for their quads in a single week. Another thing that supports this claim is the fact that there was no strength difference between all groups. Given the fact that hypertrophy and strength basically go hand in hand, it makes no sense that the high volume group grew so much more muscle without the strength benefits. So even though the results of this study were promising, the majority of the science community wasn't satisfied with these results. Fast forward another year, we have the BAS-VAL study. BAS-VAL? So what they did in this study was analyze multiple high quality studies, including the previous one from Schoenfeld, to see what the actual optimal range is for hypertrophy. So what they found out from analyzing these studies is that technically the subjects that did the higher set ranges grew more muscle than the moderate volume group. But the difference was not significant, except for triceps. The triceps, for some reason, showed a better response to higher volumes. Take that as you will. This is your excuse to go blast your triceps right now. So even though this study showed that a moderate volume range is optimal for hypertrophy, there still was no study that showed there was a ceiling for volume. The higher volume still on average had more muscle growth than a moderate volume group, but the difference was so small it simply isn't efficient to go to those high ranges. Fast forward 2 years to the most recent study done by Albi et al. From Albi Yo, why these researchers got such weird names, bro? Sound like football players. This is the first study that actually showed a limit to volume. All previous studies were done on inexperienced trainees. This is the first study actually done on experienced lifters. So what did they do? 43 experienced men with a baseline of 13 sets, meaning they did 13 sets per muscle per week before they started the study, were training their lower body for 3 times a week, 8 weeks long. They got split again in 3 groups: low volume, moderate volume, and high volume. They didn't actually go all out failure on every set. They were told to leave 2 reps in the tank on their first set and then go all out to failure on their last. These were the results. So for strength, the high volume group actually had the worst results. This is likely because they were probably already training very hard before they started this study. The high volume group started with doing double their training volume. They were basically just overtraining. And here are the results for muscle growth. There were no statistical differences between all groups. The low volume group and the high volume group gained the same amount of muscle in this study. And here's the crazy thing: the low volume group technically had the highest effect, with the high volume group having the lowest. So this was the first actual study that showed that doing more volume didn't equal more growth. So this study basically confirms that doing 10 to 20 sets per muscle per week is probably most optimal for most trainees. So why is everyone still saying to do less? Like, these guys are talking about set ranges between 5 to 10 sets. But you see, the problem with most people isn't volume, it's intensity. The one thing all these studies have in common is that everyone was training hard as hell. Most gym goers are basically playing with their wee-wee and are wondering why they don't see results with 30 sets in a single workout. But the problem with just saying train harder is the fact that these guys are basically training on such ridiculous volume ranges that it's practically impossible to train harder without killing yourself in the gym. So the most practical thing for people to do is to lower their volume. This in turn gives them the room to actually up their intensity. If you're doing 12 sets for your chest in a single workout, but you know you have to take every single set relatively close to failure, you're gonna be jumping off a roof before you start the second exercise. If you only have 5 or 6 sets for your chest that workout, it's totally doable to up the intensity. And if you have mastered the intensity on those lower set ranges, only then increase the volume towards that 10-20 set range. So how do you even know if you're actually training hard enough? Do any exercise you want with the same weights and same sets you usually do. The only difference is the last set you need to go all out failure with the same weight. If you were able to do more reps on that last set compared to the previous sets, you are 100% not doing shit in the gym. You need to up the intensity, bro. The last set should not be exceeding the previous sets. So is the 10 to 20 sets range bullshit? No. If you're actually training hard enough, the 10 to 20 set range is the most optimal range to be in for maximal muscle growth. But most people don't need to maximize their growth. Remember, the first 6 to 8 sets for a single muscle in a week cause the biggest growth stimulus, meaning 60 or 80% of the gains are just from those 6 to 8 sets. The rest of the growth is between the 8 set range and 20 set range. Stop thinking in training optimally and start thinking in training efficiently.